Hi, everyone. I'm Sam Eckmann of Gold Derby here with Nadia Stacey, the Oscar-nominated makeup designer, hair designer of Cruella. And, I have to just start out saying congratulations. It's your first Oscar nomination. And if you could walk the rest of us through, what does that feel like? How does it feel to hear your name called on that morning?
I've been asked it so many times this week, and I think I'm still in a kind of weird, surreal bubble of. And when you just said Oscar nominee, it's like, really? I watched it at work with some of my crew, and yeah, as they said Cruella, we just screamed. It was just, yeah, it's pretty amazing. And you have to keep kind of suddenly you get an email saying, welcome to the Academy and that kind of thing. And you just think, what, this is crazy. So it's a good feeling. It's good.
Well, that's good. It's a great achievement here. And one thing that's, kind of very impressive about this is that Cruella is obviously based on this animated character who has a very iconic, striking look that has lasted and endured with people. When you took this job, were you given sort of a list of parameters or rules like to stick to, did they at all want to try and stick to something when you were taking this on?
Amazingly, no. I can't actually believe I'm saying that. And I know the parameters were black and white hair. That was kind of it, which is incredible for a Disney film, particularly as you said, it's such an iconic character. Everybody knows her. So no, it was just the black and white hair. But I think because it was an origin story, so there was and we're creating Cruella in our story. We don't start with her created. So I think that gave me a huge scope and blank canvas. And also that Craig Gillespie was at the helm, and he's not, I wouldn't have thought he was the regular choice for Disney, and yet turns out it worked pretty well. So it's kind of, yeah, you felt like you had a little bit more freedom, I guess. But no, they never kind of shackled me with anything really.
And it seems, in terms of the freedom, she's a budding fashion designer in this origin story. Does that at all put extra pressure on your work when like people are really going to be paying attention to her aesthetic and how she looks? It's a central piece of the plot, really.
Yeah, I think now when I think back to it, it kind of panics me more. I think, oh my gosh, but at the time it's so fast moving and there's so much to do. Emma was in pretty much every single scene, so it was so full on all the time. And if it wasn't, it was huge ballroom scenes that I had to oversee. And so you didn't really have time to think about it. But when I think back, I think actually that is really daunting, because we're essentially creating a kind of a fashion line, and I'm sure fashion designers would tell you that takes years to hone that craft and to get your individual look. So it's yeah, but I always go back to the thing that because of the era that we were set in, and because it was punk, it's such a mashup of so many different styles that I felt like it gave us the freedom to sort of play, really. So I just did.
Well, I would love to talk about that era because, the punk aesthetic is so present throughout this and a really great twist on her origin, I think. How did that punk scene influence the way you approached makeup for her?
I mean, massively, because I always immerse myself in whatever period we're set in. And that's very important to me, what's going on socially. And I always try and put myself in the mind of that person. So if I was a Stella, what kind of people are passing me on the street, what's their hair like, what their makeup like, what shops are opening, what fashion designers are big at the time. But what was happening in London at that time was that this punk scene was exploding, and that was kind of shocking at the time. The people hadn't seen that look before. They didn't know what it was, and it really kind of was kind of a shock to society, really. So I think it very heavily influenced the fact that we could go big and bold and creative with the looks, because that was what punk were doing. So it gave me I became brave with that, I guess.
Yeah. A lot of basically every look she has, and this is very, very bold and dramatic, which is awesome.
Mm.
The one I think that has really taken off and become, a centerpiece of a lot of different images is the future, sort of
Yeah.
worn as a mask, sprayed across her face. She has this great, bold, glittery red lip. Can you just walk us through that look? What was the inspiration behind that?
Yeah, it was mainly because in the script it says the next day, the next scene, that the Baroness is holding a paper and it says, "Is Cruella the future?" So I was thinking, how can I tell that story? Because hair and makeup is very heavily used to tell the story in this film, and so I was thinking about it all the time. And I had the Sex Pistols album up on the wall, and I guess it was just by kind of osmosis over the weeks. It had just gone in, and I was listening to punk music, and I just saw it. And then I Googled whether there was a Sex Pistols font, and it came up, and I was like, oh, hang on a second. I could literally write the future across Emma Stone's face. So I kind of put it out there to Craig and to Emma and said, I've had this crazy idea, but what do you think? And I liked the fact that because she screeches in on this motorbike, that maybe it was like a tire mark across the face in black, and then this Sex Pistols font, and everybody just went for it. And yeah, it's become this huge thing that you could never imagine at the time it was going to do that.
Yeah. Have you ever done work on something that it seems like every look she has is designed to make a statement, and really she's showing up in all these places to make a statement? And I
Yeah.
know, you've worked on many indie films and stuff that don't necessarily have that opportunity. What was that switch like, getting to go big like that?
I think I just went wild. I think I just, as soon as I realized, I came in because it was a huge task for me, and I'd never done anything of this size. So I think probably in the beginning, I came in quite tentatively, kind of checking things out and what I was going to do. And as soon as I realized that, hey, these guys aren't stopping me, I just got braver and braver and bolder and bolder. And I knew that those moments that you see, those big kind of fashion impacts, they're so quick in the film. They're cut to fast music, they're quick, punchy moments. So I knew that they had to, and she needs to make a statement. She's trying to get rid of the Baroness and say, I'm the new kid on the block, basically. So they needed to be like, bam, in your face looks. So they had to be that big. And it was kind of amazing. I mean, it's a dream job for a hair and makeup designer, because like you said, I'd not really had the chance to be that crazy before. The Favourite had made me brave, I think, be able to push the boundaries of what period is. But then this was like, they just kind of wound me up and let me loose.
If you're working on a specific period, are you kind of looking at like what actual materials they had, what specific styles of lipstick? Does that go into your thought process?
Yeah, always, because I always, as I say, imagine myself as that character, or imagine myself living at that time. So I look at, even if it's a nail varnish, what nail varnishes were being sold at that time, and what color, and who was the biggest fashion icon at that time, and what are they wearing, what's their eyeshadow color, so everything. And I try to stick around that as much as possible. And so it was very true for a lot of Cruella's looks. So as bold as they are, they're actually minimal products, because I wanted to believe that Estella could go out on the streets and buy them. So the classic Cruella look is, I think, maybe kind of 4 or 5 makeup products. That's it. The big future look is one black airbrush color, and then the lip color and jewels. That's 2 products. So I really kind of wanted to, and that feels a bit punk too. They wouldn't have access to everything. It would have just been access to what they had, and did all these crazy looks maybe with one eyeliner. So I wanted to do the same.
Yeah. And how long does it take, thinking of her hair, it's one thing to draw, something in a 2D animated film. How long did it take to sort of translate that like very stark black and white look into something that worked?
It was a real challenge, actually. I never realized that would be the biggest challenge, but to creatively work on one side being white and one side being black is actually really hard. It does something to your eye. You can't one side looks different to the other. It really throws you off. So it was actually really hard. And the hair behaves differently on the black side to the white. because they're processed differently. And so I'd have all these ideas and go, oh, this is kind of what I'm thinking, and then the wigs wouldn't do it, or so we'd have to adapt it again. And so it was one of the biggest challenges of the film, to be honest. And we didn't have that many wigs. It was for her main wigs, we just couldn't get them made and couldn't get the hair in time. So it was a lot of kind of changing one wig to adding things and taking things off, like a Lego kit, I used to say. It was like adding different bits to it.
Well, that also seems very punk to me, I think.
Exactly.
You know, and we're talking a lot about Emma Stone and about the punk scene, but you actually have to sort of dip your toes into a whole other world with the other Emma Thompson, who has really great, you know, she does not live in the punk world. She's very high fashion and has these amazing wigs. How did you kind of approach that culture clash there?
Well, luckily we had the amazing Naomi Don, who's nominated with me, and she looked after Emma Thompson, and they had an existing relationship. So I knew that she could kind of push ideas to Emma because she trusts her so much. And we had a chat in the beginning and said we need the silhouette to look very different. It needs to look sculpted and very together and very polished. And somebody that has created their look in the 1950s and stayed with it, which is what a lot of people do. You know, you kind of get your look maybe in your 30s and go, that's it then forever. And it's like, that's what she'd done. And then so we kept thinking of these very sculptured, structured hairstyles, and then they just started to grow. And essentially they were a bit Lego kit too. It was like, right, we just add these sculptures and add these things on top. And Naomi just did this amazing job with this very beautiful, glamorous makeup, which everything about it is in such a different world to Cruella. And it's amazing that you have that existing in one film.
Yeah. And appearance is just so, you know, connected to our individuality, and it's connected to character development, especially in this film, because you see Cruella making herself. How do you sort of involve the actors? Like, are they kind of pitching things to you ever? Like, does Emma Stone ever have an idea of something? How do you kind of involve them in the creative process?
Well, I think it depends, obviously, who it is who the actor is. With Emma, I have, again, such an existing relationship with her that allows that trust. So she knows that I know what works on her, what she likes, what she doesn't like, but it will be, to be honest, she's super easy. So she's kind of really up for trying any of these crazy ideas. And the madder they got, and the bolder they got, the more she loved it, because I think it really does help to. The reason that Cruella is doing that is to give herself confidence to be able to stand in front of the Baroness and say, I'm here. And I think equally that helps with an actor to be able to do that too, because you're behind this character, you're suddenly immersed in someone else. It's not Emma Stone, it's Cruella. So it's a huge part of the process.
Yeah. And I don't know if you've seen this, but I wanted to ask you, because there has been after this film release, there was like an explosion of drag queens taking on Cruella. There's like, you know, sponsored posts with, you know, Gottmik and Manila Luzon, but like here I'm in New York, and so many queens have done Cruella makeup and hair and creative numbers. Have you witnessed any of that explosion going on?
I don't think a day has gone by since the film was released that I haven't had somebody send me, from 3-year-old children to grown men and women to drag queens, recreating one of the looks. It's been one of the most amazing things about the whole thing. And that, honestly, all this award stuff has just been such a brilliant cherry on the cake. But actually, before all that, to have people recreate what you have done is just so beautiful. And particularly with the drag artists as well, because it was, you know, that was a huge part of my process. I'd really looked at lots of drag artists. I saw both the Emmys basically as kind of, they were creating drag, they were creating personas, and particularly Cruella, she's almost painting a different persona on her face. And so it's so amazing to see that. Yeah, it's great.
Before I have to let you go, I wanted to ask about a little bit of what comes next, because I think since The Favorite, you know, you won the BAFTA for The Favorite. And I feel like you have had a very busy time since then with,
Yes.
everybody's talking about Jamie with the father, this Cruella all releasing at once. Is there something that you haven't done yet, whether that's an era, a style of film, style of hair or makeup that you really are hoping that you can now tackle?
I really want to work with Guillermo del Toro. That would be, I just absolutely adore his films, and I'm always interested in just something that's slightly different. So if something comes in that I can do a slight twist to or do something different with, I'm really interested. But honestly, it's always about script and director. Always, it's I did a film called Living last year with Oliver Hermanis, and it's 1950s, but it's 1950s with no twist. I couldn't go crazy with it, but it was just beautiful to be able to tell such a lovely story. So it really depends what comes in. But I think after all this, the main thing is sleep. I'm going to have some sleep.
Well, that seems like a valid
A good
desire that you
plan.
can sleep before the big Oscar ceremony, and maybe you'll get to run into Guillermo and pitch him for his next film there.
I hope so.
Well, Nadia, thank you so much for joining me. It was wonderful to talk to you. If you're out there watching, subscribe to Gold Derby. Keep in touch with us throughout the rest of the season. And thank you once again, Nadia.
Thank you so much for asking.